Mr. Wilshire, I presume?
Oh, please, call me Tom. It's so great to finally meet you. Well, I didn't think you would come.
Oh, well, I always do what I promise to do. Please, please. I'm working on some edits here while we talk.
Right. Well, I guess just having this meeting arranged through an intermediary and, well, not knowing where you live.
Oh, the reason I keep my address private is I don't want anyone to know the dreary location of my hovel. I would never take anyone there. The wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One of us has to go.
So what would you like?
Is it too early for absence?
Well, that's entirely up to you. Isn't there a saying that time is what you make it?
Absence it is then.
Anything sweet?
Oh, no. I've put on so much weight since I left prison. I'm trying to lose.
Garçon? He'll have an absinthe, please. Wait a minute. Bring us a bottle, 2 glasses, and a carafe of water. I'm going to have some myself.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. But I must apologize for asking you to pay for this interview. It's just that...
There's no need to apologize. Robbie Ross told me all about your financial position.
Yes, I should be embarrassed. But one cannot choose. Anyway, my most embarrassing moment occurred a few months ago. I met Dame Nellie Melba on the Rue Le Star.
Nellie Melba? The opera singer?
Oh, indeed. Poor woman, she was in such a state of shock. She didn't recognize me at first. I said, Dame Nellie, I'm about to do something terrible. I'm about to ask you for money. The poor thing was in such a state of shock that she just gave me the entire contents of her purse, and we both scurried away in embarrassment. It's the last I saw of her.
Well,
No water for me, thanks. I'll just take it straight.
you needn't worry about money. I'm more than happy to pay. To your health.
What's left of it? 2 years of hard labor in Reading jail has taken a toll on my health.
I can't imagine what a terrible ordeal it must have been for you in that dreadful prison.
Yes, dreadful it certainly was.
Someone of your talent and sensitivity should be treated so cruelly. It makes my blood boil.
Oh, it's all right. It was just dreadful. But at least it made me more appreciative of the things that truly matter in life. Like my wife and my children. I miss them terribly. But tell me, how does an American from Ohio get to know a Canadian like Robbie Ross?
We met at Cambridge.
Oh, of course, I should have guessed.
I was 2 years ahead of him, but I immediately sensed an affinity when I came across him at a Cambridge pub that was, well, popular with, well, the more simpatico, those of similar interests. As a matter of fact, it was I who introduced Robbie to what you've described as, well, a love that dare not speak its name.
Well, that's a coincidence. It was Robbie who introduced me to that world. Except in Robbie's case, it was lust, dare not speak its name. Oh, I was never in love with Robbie. Although I've grown to be quite fond of him. Wait. It's just that he caught me at a very vulnerable time.
Oh?
Well, the first few years of my marriage, they were wonderful. And if things had continued the way they were going, I seriously doubt that I would have been vulnerable to the temptations that Robbie introduced me to.
Are you telling me that you never experienced any proclivities in that direction in your younger years?
Well, if I did, I would have chalked it up to an aesthetic thing. I mean, I could admire a handsome man without wanting to consummate that admiration in any physical sense.
So you never had any problems in that area where your wife was concerned?
On the contrary, we had great moments of exquisite pleasure and deep tenderness, well, unlike I've experienced with anyone else. But then,
I hope you don't mind my asking such intimate questions. I'm just truly anxious to understand you as completely as I'm able.
well, good luck with that. Anyway, I did agree that you could ask me any question, and I want to make sure you get your money's worth.
Well, I prefer to think of it as giving you an opportunity to unburden your soul and contribute a better general understanding of you and your life.
For whose benefit, pray tell?
Or for the benefit of posterity, I suppose.
Who's going to remember me in years to come?
Well, I'd like to hope that everyone would.
As what? As something not to do, as a warning to others? To make us tell them to stop what they're doing and think it over?
No, look. Apart from your writings, which I greatly admire and I expect they will endure, I hope that you'll be remembered as kind of a martyr for our kind. The same way Jesus was a martyr for the general love of mankind.
But my dear friend, I am trying to tell you, I am not a martyr of what you call our kind. I'm a man who is primarily devoted to his wife. In fact, it was my devotion to her that led to my dalliances with Robbie Ross and Bosie Douglas and others.
How so? I don't understand.
Oh, of course you don't. Neither does anyone else, including me at times.
Well, could you enlighten me?
Well, it's quite simple, really. After the children were born, my wife, Constance, lost interest in, shall we say, the physical side of marriage.
Well, that happens in many marriages after children enter the picture. It's usually when the husband starts looking for a mistress.
But that's the thing, you see. I was too devoted to Constance. If I sought another dalliance with another woman, I would have felt like it was a terrible betrayal of her.
But a dalliance with another man was okay?
Constance was the only woman for me, and I had promised never to be unfaithful to her. I like to think, in my heart and my affections, that I've never been unfaithful to her. It was the purest love I've ever known.
So you're saying that in your mind, your extramarital affairs were your way of remaining faithful to Constance?
Well, I don't know. It sounds a little contrived and, as an excuse for what I did. But I did not see my dalliances with Robbie Ross and others as a betrayal of my wife. I loved my life, and I wanted everything to continue the way it had been.
Well, success came quickly, it seems.
Oh, yes. I cultivated that with great thought, very carefully. I started my campaign for recognition when I entered Oxford. The first thing I did was lose my Irish accent.
Yes. I keep needing to be reminded of your Irish roots, why you became such the image of an English eccentric. There was something almost aristocratic about it.
Don't forget, I come from Irish aristocracy.
Oh, that's right.
Everything was going to plan. And I was nurturing myself into being the public figure I desired. I wanted to be famous, or at least notorious. Aside from losing my Irish accents, I began to cultivate a character that was a fun-loving dilettante who cared nothing about his studies. But behind the scenes, worked very hard towards academic success. But I wanted it to appear effortless.
But why go to all that trouble?
Well, cleverness means nothing if it doesn't appear to be effortless. I wanted to surprise everyone. So the Dons were astonished when I took a prize and won the Nougative Prize for poetry. Oh, the bad boy doing so well at the end.
And after graduating from Oxford, you announced to the world that you were a professor of aesthetics.
Well, announcing was easy enough. Getting people to take notice, well, that took a little more out of this. Fortunately, my time at Oxford and the people I met there helped smooth my path.
You obviously enjoyed your time at Oxford.
Oh, Oxford was paradise for me. For the first time in my life, I had found real companionship.
Well, did you never have that at your school in Ireland?
No, I don't know. I have a vague notion of my early school days, but I seem to recall them to be detestable.
I believe that you were initially educated at a Protestant school that was known as the Eton of Ireland.
Oh, yes, that was my father's wishes, but my mother would have preferred me to go to Catholic school.
She was Catholic.
Oh, yes, indeed. Unbeknownst to my father, she had me baptized into the Roman Catholic Church.
But you never practiced Roman Catholicism.
Oh, no, not until recently. My time in Reading jail, I found myself turning towards the church. I found myself remembering the things that my mother had taught me. I was particularly upset when she wasn't allowed permission to see me in prison.
I heard about that. It's so disgraceful.
Roman Catholicism allowed me to remain connected to her, particularly after she died. I was upset that I could not attend the funeral. I still haven't recovered from it.
I heard about how you waited on the docks at Dover for the arrival of Sarah Bernhardt and threw lilies at her feet.
The divine Sarah. Now, there's a woman of character. Oh, as an actress and as a woman. Oh, she is a pioneer, a woman ahead of her time.
And all that stuff with the lilies. I mean, you walking along Piccadilly, throwing them at her feet. How serious were you about it?
Oh, it was all part of my plan to draw attention to me and my work. In the divine Sarah's case, it was to promote my new play in London, Salome.
Which unfortunately never happened.
Sadly, no. The Lord Chamberlain had ruled that it was illegal to portray a biblical figure on a live stage. Luckily, the French have a more enlightened view.
Yes. I saw it when it opened here in Paris.
Yes, when I was still in prison.
That was too bad. You missed a marvelous performance. Why, Miss Bernhardt was so rich and wonderful in her performance.
No, I expected nothing less.
But were you very disappointed when the Lord Chamberlain banned it from the London stage?
Yes, and no. The resultant publicity generated interest in me and my work. So, in a balance, it was good.
Now, it's reported that when you arrived at the New York Customs, you claimed that you had nothing to declare but your genius. Is that true?
I might have said something like that. Yes, it does sound like me, doesn't it? I've always agreed that I should proclaim my genius. You know, promoting is just half the battle of getting your reputation and success started.
Well, what about Gilbert and Sullivan's portrayal of you as Reginald Bunthorne in Patience? How did that kind of publicity sit with you? It wasn't exactly a very flattering portrait.
Perhaps not. But I fell about laughing when I first saw it. If you cannot take a joke against yourself, you have no business writing comedy.
But you were portrayed in such an effeminate way. Don't you think it fed the public's perception of you as the kind of person that the Marquis of Queensberry accused you of being?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, my viewpoint is I wanted to turn the spotlight in on me, to promote me and my work. Like it did with my tour of America, sponsored and paid for by the Dorley Cart Company.
Well, to heighten interest in their opera.
Yes, while at the same time heightening interest in me. It served both parties well. I have no complaints. It was a wonderful time in my life to see America, which was originally only supposed to go 4 months, but it was extended for a year.
Now, it was not long after your return from America that you met your wife.
Indeed, it was.
You're quoted as saying that marriage makes a life of deception necessary for both parties involved. Were you just being facetious? Or?
Oh, no. That's just earworm. Just something to make me sound witty.
But the truth is, you did in fact employ deception in your marriage.
Yes. Yes, and I regret I found it necessary to do so. But, like I said, I loved Constance. It's just that some people claim that my marriage was an attempted diversion to hide my true orientation, but there was no truth to it.
Well, marriage followed fairly quickly after you met.
Yes. We were married at St. James Church, Paddington, May 29th, 1884. It was the start of one of the most wonderful periods of my life. Children followed soon, and I loved playing in the nursery with them. I would get down on all fours, and I would become a horse, a lion, a wolf. I would tell them fairy stories.
Now, The Selfish Giant is one of the fairy stories that you wrote for them.
Indeed it was.
I think that's one of the most beautiful stories ever written.
So do I. But of course I could be biased. Anyhow, thank you for the compliment. I do miss them, though. I miss them terribly. I'd give anything to see them again.
I understand your wife died recently.
Yes. And along with it, any opportunity to ever see my children again. You know, they were given a new surname, Holland, to isolate them from the shame now associated with the name Wilde.
Yes, I did hear about that. I'm so sorry.
So am I. It broke my mother's heart, and I believe hastened her death. So, in a short amount of time, I lost the only 2 women I ever really cared for. But I mustn't allow myself to be drawn back into self-pity. It's so corrosive to the soul.
Your marriage seems to have coincided with one of the most productive periods of your life. Well, Lady Windermere's Fan was staged less than a year after your wedding and was quickly followed by 3 more, culminating in The Importance of Being Earnest, which, well, many people have described it as one of the greatest stage plays ever written.
Ooh. Oh, that's very discerning and intelligent of them. Of course, I had a body of work before my theatrical career took off. I had my fairy stories, and a body of fiction that included The Picture of Dorian Gray. And it is true that the years of my marriage were the most fruitful and commercially successful period of my life. I made a lot of money.
Now,
Constance gave me the room to be creative and be supportive. And I found that my marriage served as inspiration for many of my stage plays.
speaking of Dorian Gray, there are a lot of people who detected a homoerotic message in the story. Oh, I'm one of them, but, well, some of the reviews from the more conservative critics were, well, very damning.
The portrait of Dorian Gray is obviously the work of a moral degenerate of the lowest ilk. It is heavy with the mephitic odors of moral and spiritual putrefaction. It is effeminate, unmanly, leprous, and filled with esoteric purity, aimed at the perverted telegraph boys and outward aristocrats who were so recently exposed in the Cleveland Street scandal as having frequented a brothel where boys were paid for sex. I think the author ought to be prosecuted under the 1885 Criminal Amendment Act for gross indecency and for having attempted to corrupt the morals of the more impressionable and easily led members of society.
Now, this was brought up at your trial, and you wrote that novel long before your involvement with Bosie Douglas or Robbie Ross or any of the others. So, how do you square that with your claim that you had no inclinations of that kind until your wife lost interest in the physical side of your marriage?
I never said that exactly. I simply said that my marriage was not an attempt or diversion to pull people's attention away from my true orientation. I truly loved my wife.
So, if I understand you correctly, Constance was the only person that you loved in the romantic sense.
In the romantic sense, yes.
Well, from my reading of De Profundis, it would seem that you were very much in love with Lord Alfred Douglas, at least in the beginning.
Well, what I felt for him was completely different. At least not in the same sense that how I felt for Constance. I would have to say I felt, I don't know, infatuation. Yes, I was fascinated by him. And there was something else I felt for him, something I felt very deeply that I have never felt with anyone else.
And what was that?
Pity. I felt sorry for the man.
But why?
All right, I adored him, okay? Like I would adore a piece of art, only in his case, with deep flaws. There was nothing physical about our relationship. I mean, an occasional kiss or a hug, but in essence, it was a platonic relationship.
His father, the Marquis of Queensberry, hardly saw it that way. Okay. In my circles, we have a saying that those who are the most hostile towards our kind are usually the ones who are the most insecure about their own orientation. Invariably, they're almost always the type of person who just wants to flaunt their masculine credentials.
That's Queensberry, sure enough. And one of the reasons I felt so sorry for his son, whom I saw was a sensitive, poetic soul. And he was not cut out for his absurdly masculine character his father wanted him to be.
And do you still cling to that view of him as a sensitive and poetic soul?
Oh, perhaps a more oversensitive, prickly soul.
But in De Profundis, he comes across as a very manipulative person, one who pushed you against your will into a course of action that everyone predicted would really only end badly for you.
Yes, he was very manipulative, and he had an aristocratic way of getting people to do his bidding.
Now, Robbie Ross says that you weren't only dazzled by his looks, but also because he came from an aristocratic family who were related to many royal households.
Yes, I don't deny it. Ross did look very similar to some of the royalty, and I had a strange fascination for them, as others, but I am a creature of my own vulnerabilities.
Well, Americans seem to be fascinated by royalty as much as any British subject. Perhaps more so because we have no royalty of our own.
There is far more than just fascination with royalty, and his good looks that drew myself to him and propelled me to my doom. It's just that Queensberry was a bully, and I felt I had to stand up to him. And it was only in the manner of the way that I was shanghaied into standing up to him that proved me to be my undoing. If left to my own devices, I would have found another way to get at him.
Well, a lot of people tried advising you against suing Queensberry.
Oh, yes. Robbie Ross was very worried about that tact. Unfortunately, I took Robbie's advice with a pinch of salt. You see, he seemed awfully jealous of Bosie and his hold on my affections. Before Bosie came along, Robbie was my closest companion. And I did him a disservice by writing it off as simple jealousy. Robbie had always my welfare in his concerns, more than anyone else.
Now, as I understand it, Robbie wasn't the only one trying to advise you against it. It seems everyone was trying to warn you against going forward with it.
Oh, yes, everyone except Bosie. After Queensberry left that note in my cloud.
To Oscar Wilde, posing as a sodomite.
Yes, that's the one. Except he spelled it with an extra M, as in sodomite.
That would say a lot about his education, or should I say lack of it.
No, Bosie thought the same, yes. He thought it was his weapon to destroy his father. He would say, "This is clear libel of proof. We have him where we want him." Note the word usage of "we," as if I shared his view in bringing down his father.
Well, I think that his desire to destroy his father would hardly be his only motive.
What other motive could there be?
Well, money, perhaps.
How does money come into this?
Well, presumably, if you had won the lawsuit, Queensberry would have been forced to pay damages.
Well, I don't know about that, but he was very insistent that we could not lose the case.
While your friends were insistent that you could not win. You said at the trial that consorting with those working class boys was like feasting with panthers, that the danger was part of the excitement.
They were more like cobras. Robbie warned me that this would happen. But by the time we realized our foolishness and decided to drop the lawsuit, the damage had been done. After Queensberry instigated those charges against me, all my friends, one by one, or those who were kindly disposed toward me, turned on me.
Oscar Wilde, the crime of which you have been convicted is so bad that one must put stern restraint upon oneself to prevent oneself from describing in language which I would rather not use the sentiments which must rise in the breast of every man of honor who has heard the details of these two horrible trials. That the jury has arrived at a correct verdict, in this case there can be no shadow of a doubt, and I hope at all events that those who sometimes imagine that a judge is half-hearted in the cause of decency and morality, because he takes care no prejudice shall enter into the case, may see that it is consistent at least with the utmost sense of indignation at the horrible charges brought home to you. It is of no use for me to address you. People who can do these things must be dead to all sense of shame, and one cannot hope to produce any effect upon them. It is the worst case I have ever tried. That you, Wilde, have been the center of a circle of extensive corruption of the most hideous kind among young men, it is equally impossible for me to doubt. I shall, under the circumstances, be expected to pass the severest sentence the law allows. In my judgment, it is totally inadequate for a case such as this. The sentence of the court is that you be imprisoned and kept to hard labor for 2 years.
How galling that you should be judged by a Philistine of the first rank. One who has no appreciation of art or any of the finer things in life. It's the fault of the ruling class, you know. They're only concerned with their horses and their estates and their damned fox hunting.
I'm sure he would have sent me to the scaffolds if it had been within his power to do so. Do you know, when I was arrested, the police let reporters into my cell and stare at me as if I was some monster or circus freak on show. Degradation and shame of it.
That's so sad. So, I don't know. Well, tell me, did you have any contact with Bosie Douglas after you left prison?
When I left prison, I had the best of intentions and resolved never to see him again. Constance had said that she would come back to me. And if she'd come back to me immediately, things could have been different. But she didn't. Oh, she had her reasons, I'm sure. Perhaps she was just waiting for things to die down. So there I was alone in Bernaville, and I was receiving messages from Bosie imploring me to come see him. I was staying in Naples at the time. Finally, I gave in to temptation.
What happened?
It was a mistake. Well, at first everything seemed wonderful. The bruised petals of our relationship gathered their bloom at the repair of and renewal of our old affection. But I guess some people never learned their lesson. It wasn't long before it all began to unravel.
My guess is it had to do with money.
You are correct, yes. Constance got to hear that I was seeing him again, and my allowance stopped. It wasn't much, bare necessities. But without it, I was destitute.
I can imagine.
No, I didn't care. At first, in our delirium in being together, I was content. In the time when I was successful, I showered Bosie with money and gifts and did not count the cost. And so I just assumed that he would just fill in the gap at my loss of my allowance. Am I so naive, Tom? Am I just a complete idiot that can't learn from his mistakes from his past?
Well, no, I think there certainly is a naive innocence about you, Oscar, allied with, well, a romantic spirit that just wants to see the best in everyone.
Yes, I think you're right.
Well, on the whole, it's a very charming virtue, and it shines through in a lot of your work, especially your fairy tales. But, well, it has been proven in many cases other than your own, it can be a very tragic flaw.
It was certainly tragic in this case.
I hate to press you for details. I know it can be very painful to recall.
Well, I think you can guess what happened next. I discovered that he expected me to find the ways and means to support us like I had done in the past. Only when I exhausted those means, the evil days began.
I expect he had no experience fending for himself.
Oh, no. He had no experience as what it is to be in the want. He had people take care of him. No. He expected me to go and write plays as I had done in the past and make money. I tried to write. Nothing came. Words arrived dead on a page.
It'd be very sad if it were to continue that way and you were no longer able to offer the world more of your genius.
Maybe we only all had just a finite amount of ideas that, once used, leaves the well empty. At least that's how I see it. Anyway, Rosie wouldn't let up. As soon as the money began to dry up, it became very sullen, reproaching me in every turn. Why didn't I write? Why couldn't I support him? It wasn't just the fact that my muse had left me, or I could not write. It was the fact that I was a pariah at the time, and there was no demand for my work.
So, when he realized that you were no longer able to support him,
He simply went to pieces. You couldn't understand the wretchedness of it all. Oh, I've seen flashes of his temper in the past, but this was far beyond anything that I could ever comprehend. He was furious, tedious. His face would contort into a sneer as if I was a piece of dog shit attached to the bottom of his shoe.
seems like he and his father had a lot in common.
Yes, and I'd always thought that his frustration with his father was the reason for his bad temper. No, it goes much deeper than that. It was hereditary. My relationship with him was never about he and I. He saw me as a means to do battle with his father, to bring him down in the end.
How did things end with him?
One afternoon I come home to find him in a towering rage. He had been faced with a washing bill of his own clothes, not mine. He whipped me with his tongue in the most appalling way. His final insult to me was I was a fat, prostitute.
How charming. And ironic. Coming from someone who had lived his entire life on other people's money.
Robbie, I didn't know you were in Paris.
I have some news. Sit, please.
Yes? What is it?
I was hesitant to tell you because I did not want to reopen old wounds, but if you don't hear it from me, you're bound to hear it from another soon enough. Did you know that Queensberry is dead?
I did hear rumors. So the world is with another tyrant. What of Bosie? Any news of him?
Apparently. He and his father were reconciled shortly before his death. And he left him a large legacy in his will. Oscar. Oscar! Oscar!
Robbie, I didn't expect you back so soon. How was the crossing?
Very smooth.
Ah, and your meeting with Bosie?
Very rough, I'm afraid.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. But he did agree to speak with you, did he not?
Well, of course I spoke to him, Oscar. You don't think I just stood there with my mouth open, do you?
Oh, you're becoming quite bold and sharp in your repartee, Robbie.
I had a good teacher.
Ah, no time for flippancy. Tell me what happened.
I think you chose the wrong emissary, Oscar. You know that I have never particularly liked the man.
Wasn't that because you were a trifle jealous of him?
You know, you have never really understood me on that score, Oscar. It was not so much jealousy as resentment for his hold over you.
Aren't the two closely related?
I don't think so. The main reason I disliked him was because I saw through his superficial charm and recognized him for the opportunistic and feckless little weasel that he truly was. And that perception was untainted by any jealousy. I just wanted you to be careful of him.
But I think you may have inflamed the situation.
How so?
Well, you know I've always said I can resist anything but temptation.
Another oft-quoted aphorism from the Wilde compendium.
Do you know, Bernard? It's like a parent giving a child a wrapped present and telling him not to open it, getting him all excited. And don't forget, it was you who introduced me to him.
Yes, and how I have regretted it afterwards.
Well, I do have to blame someone.
You have nobody to blame but yourself.
Please,
Particularly when so many people were warning you against him.
I see. So please, tell me more about this meeting with him. What did he say? At least he agreed to see you, did he not?
Yes.
And?
He wasn't exactly sympathetic. He went on about his horses and his stables. He was complaining about how much money they were costing him.
Horses? And stables? Oh, I cannot believe that. You cannot possibly mean that.
Well, we agreed that he was his father's son in temperament, yes? Well, it seems that now he has taken after his pursuits and interests as well. He is becoming more like his father with each passing day.
When I spoke to him about the Philistine nature of fox hunting.
Yes, the unspeakable after the uneatable.
Yes, and I thought he agreed with me.
Well, he would have agreed with you on anything that cast his father in a bad light.
So he's inherited his father's vices as well as his money?
Well, I don't know if he has actually joined the fox hunting set, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Not really. Not when you are dealing with somebody who has no core principles and is only out for himself.
Talk about me.
That was the reason you sent me there, wasn't it?
And?
You used to say that the only thing worse than people talking about you was people not talking about you. But I don't think it applies in this instance.
That bad?
Yeah. I'm afraid so. Some of the things that he said were quite vile.
Oh. Like what?
I'd rather not.
Please, Robbie, you must tell me.
It will only hurt you, Oscar.
Do you think he can hurt me any more than he already has? So you might as well tell me. Come on, tell me.
If you really must know. He called you a bloated, old leech.
That old boy. It's exactly the same thing that he told me when he abandoned me in Naples. For a wordsmith, he is Reese. Oh, he seriously lacks in his poetry and wordsmithing. If you're going to insult me, you had better come at me with more elegance and imagination.
Yes, next time you'll be expecting him to insult you in rhyming couplets.
That's good, Robbie. That's very good. It's exactly the same thing I might have said in the same situation.
Well, it's good to see that you haven't lost your sense of humor.
Haven't I? You know, I've never really laid claim to having a sense of humor. Oh, sense of humor is a quality grossly overrated in my opinion.
And what about the people who laugh at your comedies?
Oh, that's just showing good discernment and judgment.
Yes.
And allowing me to bask in my brilliance.
Oh, as modest as ever, I see.
What's there to be modest about? But there's no modesty, there's no affectation, no pretense, and as you are well aware, I have none of that. So let the common, untalented people have their modesty, and let me bask in my brilliance.
Oh, Oscar. That you can joke at a time like this. What resilience of spirit. I am filled with admiration.
I know you are, dear boy. You always were. And I rely on that affection to keep me afloat during my darkest hours. But first, let's put all levity aside, and let's discuss your meeting with Bosie in more detail. Well,
When I asked him if he was ready to repay some of the debt which he owes you, he just erupted into one of his temper tantrums. I asked him that you were hoping for him to settle £1,500 on you or something to an annuity of £150, but he became very angry and vehement in his view that you have no claim on him.
no claim on him? Oh, Robbie, I may have not done what I should have done in this world, and I know it better than anyone. But after all the money and gifts I'd lavished on him, he simply turns his back on me when I have nothing more to give.
Don't worry about the money,
Oh, it's-
Oscar. I will see to it that you are taken care of.
It's not the money, Robbie! It is his denial, his insults, his hate that kills me. I cannot believe that I have ruined myself over someone who cares nothing for me, and that is something I just cannot shrug off.
If you allow him to occupy your mind in such a corrosive way, then you are simply allowing him to dominate your life as much as he ever did.
It is not the money, Robbie. It is the time and money that I lost from wasted hours and unfinished work.
Well, why? Because you didn't want to hurt his feelings?
No.
Or because
He would come to me whenever I was away from Constance and the children. He would think of it as an open invitation to be with me.
But wasn't that often the case?
No, certainly not. No. But I suppose I didn't change his mind. I suppose, well, I was afraid of hurting his feelings.
Well, it is obvious that you cannot look to him for gratitude or remorse.
But don't you think it's shocking that he's never made an attempt to contact me since his father died?
Shocking? No. Disgusting. Thoughtless. Insensitive. Ungrateful. Philistine. And extremely reprehensible, yes! But not shocking! To me, it is all drearily predictable. It is exactly what I expected from someone like him. It is so perfectly in character. I am surprised that you expected anything else.
You know what an optimist I can be. Always hoping for the best. Well, there's no point in sitting around and moping over it. Let's go out. Let's go and have our fill of absence and regale each other with happier times. Oh, Oscar. Well, how is he?
Sometimes there are glimpses of the old Oscar, but they are becoming fewer and farther between. Alfred Douglas's refusal to help him in his hour of need seems to have been the last straw. He is putting on a brave face, but beneath it all he is totally crushed.
It's so sad.
He seems to have resigned himself to die. He says he has nothing left to live for. The other night he dreamed that he was supping with the dead. I told him I thought he would be the life and soul of the party. To his credit, he mustered a smile. Most days he just sits around or lies listlessly on the bed.
Has he read any of the books that I brought him?
He picks one up occasionally, but seems to have lost interest in it in the same way that he has lost interest in everything else. And you know things are in a bad way when he no longer has any curiosity about the latest gossip.
Well, that is alarming.
What really worries me is that he has been asking for a priest.
He told me that he believes his mother had him secretly baptized in the Catholic Church, but he didn't seem sure. Can he receive absolution from a priest if he cannot prove it?
I'm not sure about these things, but I will visit the nearest Catholic church tomorrow and make inquiries.
You say there are moments, however infrequent, where he appears to be his old self.
It's like the sun rising out from behind a cloud. But it is never long before the clouds return.
Well, then we must just do our best to try and keep his spirits up.
Yes. Oscar.
Bobby.
You cannot just lie in bed all day.
I don't have the energy or the motivation to do anything else.
You're wasting away.
Just bring it.
What?
The absinthe I asked for.
No, the doctor said it was very bad for your health.
What does it matter?
Well, it may not matter to you, but it matters to me. I want you to live a long, healthy life.
Oh, Robbie, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not going to be around much longer.
The doctor said that if you took care of yourself, you still have a few good years left ahead of you.
Oh, Robbie, my only concern is settling my debts before I go. At the moment, I'm dying beyond my means.
How much do you owe?
Oh, hundreds of pounds. I've lost count.
Well, if it is your hope of repaying these debts that is giving you the will to go on, I shall not offer to settle them for you.
Oh, you have settled enough on me already. If it wasn't for your monthly allowance, I would not survive at all. And I would not have survived Naples without you. Life can be so unfair, Bobby.
I'm not complaining, I just... Your friendship has given me more than I could ever hope to repay.
It's very sweet of you.
I just wish I could help you get better.
Well, at least in this condition, I'm spared the tyranny of other people's expectations.
What do you mean?
Oh, people are always expecting me to rattle off some fresh witticism that they could substitute for wit or humor. In my present condition, I no longer feel the obligation to fulfill their expectations.
Well, I think you have provided the public with more than enough quotable quotes to last them a good long while.
Death must be so beautiful. To lie in the soft, brown earth, with grassy waves above your head, and listening to silence. To forget life, to forgive time, to be at peace.
ignoring the fatalism in that pronouncement, I see that even you are referring to your legacy of quotable quotes. I recognize that one from your story of the Canterville ghost.
Well, I, of all people, should have every right to quote myself, don't you think?
Bullshit, please, come in. Oh, Oscar was just telling me how relieved he is about no longer having to live up to other people's expectations and he provide them with quotable quotes. I was just saying that I believe he has provided the world with an abundance of quotable quotes.
Oh, well, I think one could carry on an entire conversation using Oscar's epigrams and aphorisms.
That is an interesting thought. Shall we try it?
Would you care to get the ball rolling?
Very well. How about this? I think God, in creating man, somewhat overestimated his ability.
On the subject of humans, some cause happiness wherever they go, while others cause happiness whenever they go.
Well, it all hinges on fashion and education. One can never be too overdressed or overeducated.
Education is an admirable thing, but it's well to remember from time to time that nothing that is worth knowing can be taught.
Oh, you are so right. Everything in this world is about sex. Except sex. Sex is about power.
That sounds very cynical. A cynic is a man who knows the value of everything and the price of everything, and yet still doesn't know the value of everything.
Well, experience has taught me that it is absurd to divide people into good or bad. People are either charming or tedious.
Yes, the same with books. Well, there's no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are either well written or badly written, that is all.
In all works of fiction, the good end happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
And if I am occasionally overdressed, I always make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Hear no evil, speak no evil, and you will never be invited to any cocktail parties. At least that's what experience has told me.
Experience is merely the name men give their failures and their mistakes.
Some men die for their mistakes. But a thing is not necessarily true because a man dies for it.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Perhaps. But it is much easier to sympathize with the sufferings of a friend. It takes a very fine nature to sympathize with a friend's success.
A good friend will always stab you. In the front.
Speaking of friends, I don't want to go to heaven. None of my friends are there.
Thank you for joining us, Oscar.
I recognize some of the quotes as my own, and others attributed to Shakespeare. I often wish that Shakespeare was still alive. I could sue him for plagiarism.
I agree.
Oh, when someone agrees with me, I must feel I must be wrong.
That's the spirit.
Except, well, we've just barely scratched the surface of your quotation, Oscar. And that's the pure and simple truth. Although the truth is rarely pure and, well, never simple.
The important thing is to be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
I sometimes wonder how I can understand a single word I'm saying. I'm not young enough to know everything.
Ooh, 2 quotes for the price of 1. Well done, Oscar.
I believe this may be a non sequitur, but I feel obliged to declare that We are all in the gutter. Except some of us are looking at the stars.
Well, speaking of non sequiturs, books that the world deems immoral are books that simply show the world its own shame.
However, you must never love someone for their looks or their clothes or for their riches, but because they sing a song only you can hear.
Speaking of love, do not forget that hearts were meant to be broken.
Is that a quote or a cliche?
No, I think some of your quotes have become cliches the longer you saw to.
No, I just say you are right. As long as I myself don't become cliche, I suppose it's acceptable.
Quotation is a serviceable substitute for wit.
But the only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it.
Except that selfishness is not living as one wishes to live. It's asking others to live as one wishes to live.
Yes, so true. But anyone who lives within their means is lacking from imagination, I believe.
Well, to live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people simply exist.
The important thing is to love yourself.
To love oneself is to begin a lifelong romance.
Yes, and I have the simplest tastes. I am perfectly satisfied with the best. It's as simple as that.
Except that the truth is never short and very simple.
I think we have visited that quote before. But I make no moral judgment. Morality is simply the attitude that we take towards people we personally dislike.
The world is a stage, and unfortunately the play is badly cast.
Yes. Too full of bores. A bore is somebody who deprives you of solitude without providing you with any company.
Humanity takes itself far too seriously. If the cavemen had learned how to laugh, history would have turned out a lot differently.
Yes, but unfortunately the public has an insatiable curiosity to know everything except what is worth knowing.
There comes a moment in one's life where one must choose to live their own life. Fully, completely, entirely, or drag out some false, shallow, degrading existence that the world in its hypocrisy demands.
The nicest feeling in the world is to do a good deed anonymously. And then make sure that someone finds out.
Well, one must remember that when a man does a thoroughly stupid thing, it's always from the noblest motives.
What of art?
Oh, it's a malady.
And love?
An illusion.
What about religion?
Oh, a fashionable substitute for belief.
You are certainly a skeptic.
Oh, never. Skepticism leads to faith.
And what are you then?
Oh, the limit is to define, and I refuse to limit myself.
Your memory serves you well, Oscar.
I remember most things I've written.
But we could go on all evening, Oscar, and we still would not run out of things that you've said that people will be quoting as long as there's social discourse.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, I'm beginning to run out of stamina. I must say goodnight.
Of course. We will leave you to your rest.
But before we conclude, one more quote, one that's more appropriate to my situation. To get back to my youth, I would do anything in the world except exercise, get up early, and be respectful. With that, gentlemen, I will say goodnight.
Good night, Oscar.
Good night, Oscar.
says it won't be long. Well,
What kind of time span are we talking about? Days? Weeks?
he couldn't be sure, but suggested that it was time to call the priest.
What are you talking? Are you speaking over there? What are you saying? I have a right to know.
It's nothing, Oscar. We were just whispering so as not to disturb your rest.
What is it?
Really, Oscar, it's nothing.
This has just arrived.
A message.
Yes.
For me? Robbie, what is it? Robbie?
It is a money order made out to you, Oscar.
Money order? How much?
Enough to cover all of your debts.
Who is it from?
It's from an old friend. They wish to remain anonymous.
Oh, Robbie, please, you must tell me.
Now, Oscar, you shouldn't excite yourself.
Robbie,
the doctor
please.
said.
Please. Read the letter. Robbie, let me read it.
Forgive me for not coming to see you, my dear Oscar. I have wronged you in many ways, I know, and I deeply regret it. I have been terribly selfish, and it causes me much pain to acknowledge at last how much I've hurt you. I have denied you in so many ways. I know you will probably find little satisfaction or solace in my regrets, or any apology I may offer. But I want you to know I did love you and still do. It is because I love you that I cannot come to see you in Paris. The memories of our times together, if all my actions caused you such ruin, are very precious to me and will remain so for the rest of my life. I simply cannot bear to have those memories sullied by seeing your life slipping away. You may consider this very selfish of me, and I offer no defense against such an accusation. You will recall the time you were ill and expected me to take care of you in the same way that you took care of me when I was ill. And I told you at the time that you were not interested in being ill, and that I would return when you were better. Of course, it was a monstrous thing to say and do. But the fact was, I could not see you ill. I couldn't help it. And now I cannot bear to be the witness of your suffering with this illness that has afflicted you. It would be more than I could stand. I'm so sorry. So very, very sorry. Yours, always, Percy.
job. Great production.